All right, let's do this. People of planet Earth, welcome to the AwokenWord podcast. This is your host, Anuj Rastogi. Just a little bit of quick housekeeping today. I'm really thrilled and excited to say that we just crossed the 1-year anniversary of the AwokenWord podcast. It has been an incredible first year. I want to thank everyone out there from all around the world who's tuned in and checked us out across all the different platforms. The feedback has been overwhelming. The comments, the DMs, all of the encouragement, and some of the criticism has all been very much appreciated. If you took out any time to say anything, whether it was a compliment or even just to rip into me, I really appreciate it. I know you got shit to do, so thank you. I also want to thank the team again at Rukus Avenue Radio out of LA. Sammy, Raul, you and the entire team have been incredible and supportive. I'm really happy for everything that you've done and really appreciate this opportunity. So, speaking of Rukus Avenue Radio, I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. My guest today is a young man who's a little younger than I actually thought he was when I started interviewing him. His name is Shantanu Pujari, and he is actually based in Mumbai, India. And this is a unique conversation on many fronts. I actually met Shantanu back in 2015, completely by chance, finding myself in the middle of a crazy rap cypher in Mumbai where he was beatboxing. And we've stayed in touch ever since, on and off. He is in Mumbai during this conversation, and through a series of technical fumbling and difficulties, I found myself on video chat with him having this conversation. So the audio quality from his end is not so great, and you'll definitely hear some of the delightful traffic sounds and ambient sounds of Mumbai in the background, along with some glitchiness. But it's all part of the charm of this conversation. Shantanu is a multifaceted young man. He is a competitive professional MMA fighter. He is a yoga instructor. He is an activist campaigning for all manner of causes. He teaches self-defense to women. He is now a hip-hop record label artist manager. He is a b-boy, a beatboxer. And I got to say that this conversation is a history lesson. First of all, it is a full-on smackdown on hip-hop history. And you're going to get that along with a rapid-fire, full-on schooling in Indian history and history of the Indian subcontinent. There's so many choice quotes and gems in this conversation. Some of my favorites are when Shantanu talks about some of the freedom fighters and historical figures in India as dope-ass MCs, and that's a particularly fun part of the conversation. And I have to let you know, if you were planning to listen to this with your kids, you have two options at this point. Either A, don't, or B, be prepared for them to say bullshit a lot, because it comes up over and over in this conversation. But it's all in good spirit. Now, at the time of this recording, I wasn't aware that Shantanu already knew the founder of Rukus Avenue Radio, Sammy Chand. Shoutouts to you, Sammy. Nor did I know at the time that Shantanu would soon actually have his own show on Rukus Avenue Radio. So it was quite an interesting thing to find that out only a matter of weeks later. Quite hilarious, actually, considering how big the world is, just how small it can be sometime. You're going to hear a lot about Shantanu's own personal journey, his exposure and experience and love for hip-hop. You'll hear how he got into the ring as a professional competitive MMA fighter, how he survived and recovered from a debilitating leg injury early on in his career. And you're going to hear all kinds of interesting and hopeful thoughts on the future of the world, the future of youth, and the future of India. For many people, you may think that multiculturalism or pluralism or melting pots are a uniquely modern or Western concept. I have to say that India has been doing this very well for thousands of years already. And you're going to hear a little bit about that from Shantanu directly. So for all the folks listening out in India and the subcontinent as a whole, peace and love to all of you. Thank you for all the support. You should feel proud and hopeful and excited that young people like Shantanu are within your reach, changing things, making a difference, and making the world a better place for everyone. So without further ado, I present to you my conversation with Shantanu Pujari. This podcast is my humble attempt to bring a grain of sand of goodness to the beach of human experience. Inspiring. This podcast is my love letter to all of you. The AwokenWord podcast. I am joined here on the AwokenWord podcast by Shantanu Pujari. So, Shantanu, I met you only once, and that was a pretty epic night for me 4 years ago, venturing out to Mud Island in Bombay. And I have to say, my love affair with Bombay, or Mumbai as it's now known, began in early childhood watching some old school Hindi movies. But I think I fully fell in love with Mumbai when I met my wife and fell in love with her. And knowing that this is a place that's shaped her, and she was the one that introduced the city to me, and I got to know it through her and through her eyes, I really have a special place for the city. Anyways, I just showed up at this bungalow that I guess a whole bunch of different crews were at. Cypher broke out, and you were the designated beatboxer, I guess, that night. And you were beatboxing a good probably half an hour straight. And at one point, I happened to have my camera with me because I was out there shooting a documentary, and I managed to capture this cypher. And I had almost no exposure to hip hop in India up until that point. And I remember that night thinking, where has this been? So, Shantanu, welcome.
Yeah, man, Anuj, it's super nice for you to have me on this show, man. It's a beautiful gesture. And yeah, man, I mean, when you met us, it was a very critical stage, or you could say the changing point of hip hop in Mumbai. You had all these MCs who were just about to break out and get into like superstardom, and everyone getting to meet hip hop and all. Getting to meet, do different big Bollywood projects, and everyone is super famous now, super, like, they're well established, and they will keep on going. And me, I've just been doing everything, man. Yeah, I've been teaching yoga 6 years. I'm a mixed martial artist. I fight. To hustle, I do like action direction in like Bollywood movies a little bit. I act here and there. Now I founded this crew called Swadesi, and then I left the crew, but then I managed more artists at this new record label called Most Wanted Records, and we've got like more crews coming from different parts of India. Okay. And basically, I started as a break dancer way before everything. I'm just telling you how I was influenced by hip hop and how I was there that day, because I had nothing to do with it, because I'm not a professional beatboxer. I just beatbox just for the fun of it, just because I love it. I started as a break dancer. I thought it wasn't enough, and I wanted to do more. Like, I looked up to people like Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee, and I thought India needs one of those. It needs that sort of expression. Yes, we have hip hop people are writing about music right now, but then you need someone with a more something which is more serious in terms of expression.
Right.
And nothing gets more serious than two men locked in a cage going at it. So. That's where I found my calm. But always I feel hip hop is the power that is going to change the globe, just because of its access to knowledge, and you can listen to one track and get so knowledgeable about everything, which you will never get in like so many books. So that's why I stay around it all the time. But I fight, man. Normally, like I'm a fighter. I do yoga. I teach yoga. That's how I make a living. Otherwise, with this hip hop, I'm just doing seva.
Okay, so let's stop there for a second. Well, first of all, I'm sorry we missed each other in Mumbai. I was there for almost 3 weeks, but just then you had left, I guess, to go to Bangkok, exploring a new job opportunity, which sounds exciting.
Yeah.
So having followed you since that one night we met, and I don't know if you recall, but there was the cipher that broke out, which I filmed and edited and sent you guys, and that was definitely an epic night. I ended up dropping...
Yeah, which is reaching 1 million views anytime soon.
That is just absolutely incredible. And it's amazing because growing up and living in the West, when I would talk to people here once I got back from India in 2015, when I talked to them about hip hop in India, first of all, they couldn't wrap their heads around it. And then when I tried to explain the magic that I saw that night, it was almost inconceivable for people. They just couldn't wrap their heads around it because they'd seen, a little bit of that pop, hip hop, if you can call it, that kind of shows up in Bollywood every now and then. But they hadn't seen real hip hop, which is what happened that night. And it was fascinating because like I've grown up with hip hop as a lover of the music. I've seen it since its early days. It was a big part of my life growing up here, particularly in a time in the West where there was a lot more racism, where people needed a way of finding a form of expression. And people who, at least of my skin color, people who are brown or South Asian or Desi, a lot of us kind of gravitated towards hip hop because there was something in that struggle of Black people in North America that we identified with in some way. And so I move from here, I travel across to India, and here I am that night beside you or on camera seeing this play out. And I thought, this is actually real hip hop. Every one of these guys have taken the essence of hip hop and internalized it and made it their own story and are using it as a way to get that back out to the world. And it was such a beautiful thing that night. Like I was in such shock, honestly. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. And it's interesting that hip hop in particular has spread around the world the way that it has. Why do you think that it hits home with people that you've grown up with? Why did hip hop resonate with you?
I think it's the only genre that I could relate to, because any other genre that I would listen to, leaving, like, Bollywood was fucked up since the start. Like, Bollywood is never giving, like, no hopes, because they all have, like, there are good musicians. There is Lata Mangeshkar, there is classic A.R. Rahman, you have, like, classical music, but then they're just removing, like, one movie a year, and the rest of the year you have this bombardment of bullshit music of
I agree.
like all of this fucking disco or whatever the fuck. Like, it doesn't resonate to what my daily life is. What I am going through, what I am seeing, it doesn't resonate to that. And then any other genre which I was seeing, everyone was trying to be that. They would try to sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like they would do their songs like, and mostly all artists in India, we lack that course of culture as a whole, like even if the artist is super this, but you don't have a connection because you can never go see them live. They're always in a place where, but hip hop is such a rooting genre where you get to see the person and relate to the person, and whatever words that he's speaking about is exactly the pages coming out of your life, because that person represents the labor class, the masses, that the 99%. What I mean by that is, he's definitely a person who never had money to buy a guitar, who had never money to buy anything, any of the instruments. He had a pen and a paper, and that's all he needed, and he wrote all of these songs. And all he had is all the stories that he could see around, and he's put it on that pen and paper. So it resonates to people. When I heard hip hop, it resonated to me so much that I connected Tupac to as much as Bhagat Singh, like I'm like, oh my god, like in India we had all of these revolutionary poets, like we had Ashfaqullah Khan, we had like Ram Prasad Bismil during the suppression, like pre 1947,
right.
All of these revolutionaries. I feel if it was not the time of British, they would be MCs if they were born in, like, in America, they would be like dope fucking gangster MCs.
That is such an epic thing to think about, that they would be these OG MCs.
Fucking, like how you see like black people represent, they would be like that, like Khalsa and proud. Or Ashfaqullah Khan would be like, I'm fucking Muslim and proud, but I'm Indian, Yeah, right. I sit down and like read namaz. So what? Like, I'm still Indian, I love everything about India. And like Tupac definitely is like Bhagat Singh. If you think of it, he died early. Bhagat Singh died early, and in a way, Tupac chose his death because he could have kept quiet, isn't it? He could have kept quiet, not said the things that he wanted to, like he had to say, acted the way he wanted to act. Like he was super, like Bhagat Singh. You know, you're not allowed in a colonized culture to speak back, or in a delusional culture to speak back. But these artists chose to speak back. Like even if you see like this late great Nippy Hussle, you know, now from
Yeah.
LA, he got shot. The same thing. He spoke about the things he's doing things for the community, but he then speaks about this Dr. Serbi. He's where like, you know, they're talking about where men can cure all diseases just because of herbs and all of this, or big pharmacies. They don't want truth to come out, and hip hop has always been the truth teller. So I feel as humans we always incline towards all these philosophical saints, like, you know, maybe in China it was Confucius, or in India we have all of these saints, like we have, you know, millions of saints. We have like all the 10 gurus, or we have like Kabir, or we have like, you know, in Turkey they have Rumi. So now we don't have all of these guys. Now we have Nas, and now we have like Kendrick Lamar, or now we have like Ab-Soul, or now we have like Logic or Loki, and all of these MCs, these super KRS-One. They are the 21st century thinkers and philosophers. So that's how it, like for me, I got awoken. Like for me, I was a young boy, just in puberty and just, you know, thinking to do all things wrong. But then comes hip hop, where it's like a father figure, where these older guys are coming from a more fucked up place, like, you know, Compton or something like that.
Yeah.
Or where you know, like where you have people where their mothers are taking drugs, doing crack, or, you know, all the atrocities that they got to face. And here I am in Bombay looking at the same thing. I'm like, okay, if they can rise up and they're telling me not to do this, and they're so cool while doing it, you know, like you see all of them, like the whole 90s clan, you see Wu-Tang Clan,
Yeah.
or you see like Run DMC, or I see
Public
Tribe Called
Enemy.
Quest, Public Enemy, KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, Nas, all of these guys, they're still going, you know, they're still there. Grandmaster Kaz, they're still there. The mission. So it just shows them how they can be as a personality. And yeah, man, I feel that's why in India also super famous, because everyone is waiting for this direction that they need for a generation. And of course, going to come from the ghetto, you know, and the ghetto doesn't have money for guitar.
Wow, you said a lot there, and I think you've said some things in ways that I've never heard anyone put quite that way, which is really interesting. The fact that hip hop is accessible just because all you need is a pen and paper or a phone or just some way to get an idea down. That's really it. It's interesting because if you look at the history of hip hop, I mean, it didn't just start in the 70s and 80s. It's got, you know, a whole history of African, particularly African music forms and rhythmic forms before that. But by the time it comes into its incarnation as we know hip hop today, at that same time in schools in Brooklyn, the Bronx, in New York, throughout much of the US, schools are getting defunded, so there's less access to music instruments, and people are living in small spaces. So now kids don't have access to music instruments. They don't have a lot of space, but what they have is their voice, a pen, a paper, maybe just enough room for a turntable. And so that expression that was getting squashed in musical forms, all of a sudden, it's almost like it reincarnates itself through hip hop, just through the voice and through the turntables. And what you're talking about with people in the ghetto can't afford guitars, it's essentially the same thing, right? Some way that expression has to come out of you. In this case, hip hop becomes the vehicle because there wasn't many other alternatives for some people. And it's so interesting that you're coming at it from a different angle, but saying essentially the same thing.
Yeah, definitely, man. And that's how I noticed, like, if you see different MCs, they have the different feel, and you could see that they are fulfilling that the need that they have. Like, if you see Nas music, it's like his father is very blues. Like, sometimes if you see, like, blues or jazz oriented.
Yeah.
Or if you see, like, Talib Kweli or Mos Def's music, it's super folk, you know. So you know that this guy wants to make folk music, but he's using hip-hop to reinvent folk music. And so what if you can't play one instrument? He's using all the instruments in one track.
Right. I have to ask you though, so far my exposure to hip hop in India has been, it feels like a period in time in America that was perhaps early mid 90s that was a lot more, you know, woke, if you can say, before the music industry co-opted it and it became a lot of mainstream nonsense, right? Like what's in the top 40 charts today isn't what you would have found in hip hop for the most part before. Now it's all about cash, or a lot of it's cash, money, women, materialism. It's nonsense. And I'm not faulting a lot of the artists who are doing it, because they may have been doing important music with something to say, but the system doesn't want to have that class of person. And whether that's frustrated Black and brown people in North America, or people with a conscious message against the 1%, or people trying to make a revolutionary change, they don't want those messages broadcast to too many ears, because that will force, a revolution, however small. And so they'll only give airtime to the people that perpetuate the same stereotypes, whether it's violence and misogyny or negativity, because that's easy to sell. So in your opinion, in India, at least from what I've seen, most of the hip hop is still substance. Like, they're still saying something. Do you see a time coming, or has it already come, where you're seeing hip hop artists and rappers break out and talk about nonsensical materialism and money and women in the derogatory ways that is in a lot of hip hop, unfortunately, today? Do you see that coming in India?
I think I'm definitely seeing both of these sides coming. Like, I can see, I think we are on a stage where it is like early 90s. The thing about United States was, I guess, even when they had music in the 1990s and they were releasing music, they were still making money out of it. So you had like people removing like all the old school artists in 1990s and 2000, at least they were selling records and they were making money out of it. But the artists in India are still like leaving, like few artists. Maybe we just have 2 record labels right now in India, 2 like independent hip hop record deals, labels. Leaving those 2 labels, any other artist is not making money from selling his records. We don't have that infrastructure where you sell your records and then you make money out of it. Like how, and you could see the success of the album on how many people have bought your CDs or bought your records. So what I say is this, that then the songs, I mean, the bullshit comes, but there's still a lot of suppressed voices. There's still a lot of suppressed stories. India is still a huge country with a lot of stories, with a lot of languages, with a lot of things to come out. And it's going to be a balance where, these Bollywood guys, they would want like bullshit, of course, bullshit rappers to say bullshit shit and whatever to sell this stuff. But then on a parallel universe, you're going to have these hungry fucks coming out of small towns, coming out of where they are, where they got hip hop, and they just, because the country is so huge and, it's going to take time to go to every place. Like, as of now, I'm seeing hip hop MCs coming from small towns. So now when they come, they are like more hungrier than the main Mumbai, like hip hop MCs from Mumbai. So I feel it's going to happen, but it's still going to take a lot of time. Like I predict maybe another 20 years. But for another 20 years, I know there's going to be rich hip hop music coming out of this country, all alongside garbage music, alongside bullshit music, alongside all the shitty music, along complementing Bollywood. But there's going to be a serious competition to Bollywood because of the use of internet. Internet has been a game changer in India since like we've got like the Ambani sponsoring everyone, like cheap internet.
Oh yeah.
So what happens is, like as it is, I needed only 5 rupees a pen and paper to make a hip hop track and few like free apps to like download like music and edit it and put it online. But I can still have access to so many people online, free, without, and have this fan base. So it gives a serious threat to like major companies and like people putting in money for bullshit, like big producers putting in music for bullshit artists, because independent musicians also are doing things on at the end the music speaks. It's like J. Cole in America, I don't think he's signed to a label and he doesn't release his records on a major label or something, but he still does good and his music is out there. Everyone knows about him.
I think that there's bullshit music and there's good music, and those are very subjective terms. What one person finds bullshit, someone else will find good, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But feed off each other, because if everyone was saying the exact same thing or had priority on the exact same things, then maybe this world wouldn't be as interesting as it is. I'm personally not a huge fan of a lot of recent hip hop in, the mumble rap, the whole phase of that. There's just a lot of nonsense out there, but there's a lot of really good stuff too. I think you have to really work a little bit harder to find it now, though. You can't rely necessarily on top 40 radio or the MTVs and whatnot to get you there. Like I came across all your old school rappers, just through hearing about it from friends. And then I felt like there was a wave of ignorance and like, where did all of that music go? But people were still making that music. You just had to look for it. You mentioned Loki, who I love. I think one of my favorite rappers probably of all time is Akala. And I think you met him a while back too. And I think he's a good example of somebody who, when I first saw his first Fire in the Booth, and I remember introducing it to some of the guys that I met when I was down there in Mumbai in 2015, an 8-minute freestyle from him, 400 years of history into it. And I found that I learned so much from hearing that I'll go and research and read about specific either moments in history or people or situations that he's actually mentioned in his music. So as a gateway to being more enlightened and educated and informed about stuff, I think his music is a great example. And there's a lot of other MCs doing all sorts of things in that domain. And that's fascinating. I think that at the same time, the music industry has changed so much for everybody. It's not just for independent hip hop artists in India. Like even the biggest names on the planet, most of the money that they're making is from touring or other deals. Like the record label system has screwed the artist so badly for so long that they've been making all the profits. The artists have walked away with almost nothing, even in the best of situations, and they're making money on tour. So it's almost like you have to give away the album just to be able to get enough people out to your tour. And so I think that that's a force, partly because of the way the record labels work, and partly because as a generation, we've come to expect music and anything digital for free. Like you go on YouTube, you find the song, you listen to it for free. You go on Spotify, you pay almost next to nothing for that thing. And then the artist who spent 15 years working on their craft and spending money to get studio time and all this stuff, they're basically giving away the thing. So if they're not touring, they're not making any money. And I think that's true regardless of where we are in the world today. So perhaps I think something needs to change in our perspective and expecting things for free from artists or just content in general.
Yeah, definitely, man. Then we can definitely stop this big, because if you expect music for free, then you're gonna get shit.
Yeah.
Like we've been getting, here's free music, here's shit, because real musicians have things to do. That's why what happens is, like back in the day, all of them were like real musicians. They did music, they could, and then after that they started doing jobs because they had to take care of their families, and no more they could like continue with that. Like MC Hammer going broke, and they just have to carry on with regular jobs, like they're working in McDonald's or whatever it takes to feed their families. Because at the end you want to feed your family,
right?
You can't keep going on with what you're. Entrepreneurship, it's just that is hip hop. I think that's real hip hop when you can use the knowledge, the most powerful element, and use like it for your side, and how not to get. That's hip hop, man. Now to get fucking hustle. Like exactly what Nipsey was doing. He had his own marathon company, and like you do things like that, and you give it back to the people, and you don't blow away money when you get all of this money, because it's not like record labels don't give you money. They give you fuck lots of money, but it's what you do with your money. If you're a boy who's like going out and drinking Hennessy and doing this and that, you don't need that money. Like you can use that money for a better purpose. Or like even Akala, when Akala told me a very interesting thing, that once you're a writer, it's not like you're an MC. Like on his daytime, he teaches children like Shakespeare. He teaches. He's a playwright. He's a play director and a teacher. That's what he does on a daily basis. Or I don't know. Even the biggest fighters, man, like the Diaz brothers, like they give classes every day. Yeah, they have one glory moment when they go out and fight and they show who they are. Yes, Akala has that one part, moment when he's going in and giving a speech about getting a double doctorate on Black history, or he's going out and he's doing a show. He has his glory moments. But when all that illusion is done, he's coming back and he's doing what he's supposed to do for his bread and butter, because he doesn't want to be dependent on the devil. He doesn't want to. He wants to be on his own will. It's not like this record label is like, he's keep pushing you, keep grinding you, or do this for me, do that for me, because I've invested this amount of money. Those fancy cars and those bitches in your videos, they cost me money, so now you have to work for me and sluggish, So Akala doesn't want that. He's like, I'd rather go, I use my brains, get more credentials, teach like people, and So hip hop is much more about that, I feel, and smart ones do it. Like the first billionaire, Mr. Dr. Dre.
Hmm.
I learn a lot from him. He's such a simple man. He's the first billionaire, but he keeps it so cool. He's produced some of the greatest hits to people, like everyone's first album. 50 Cent's first album, like he did
Yep.
albums with Kendrick Lamar, or like Exhibit's first album, Snoop Dogg's album, Tupac's like music. But he's so simple. Like when you look at him, you don't know that he's the first billionaire, but he's kept it cool since NWA's time.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting too. I think what I noticed in 2015 when I met you and a lot of these other guys, I've seen attempts at hip hop from Bollywood at least, and maybe some pop music over the last probably 15, 20 years in India. And I think all of them fell flat, honestly, because it felt like someone from India trying to do their thing in a way that looked Western. Some guy he'll shave his head. It's as if you watched a little bit of MTV. He shaved his head, threw on like a tank top, and just started acting like he lived somewhere in South Central LA, as opposed to actually just being himself and telling his story. And what I think hits home now about hip hop in India is that it is the real story in the language, in the slang. And, for folks who aren't familiar with Indian languages and culture, a lot of Indian languages are already very rhythmic. Like, I don't understand a word of Tamil, but it is such a rhythmic language already. Like, just hearing, some auntie speaking it, it may as well sound like rap. So the language is already so conducive to flow, to beat structures, and the content, I think, and the way that you say things in certain languages, it's a lot more poetic in a lot of ways. And then you mix in the slang. It's almost as if all these different Indian languages really, they're like made for expressing themselves through hip hop. And I think when you actually take the essence of hip hop and then you apply it in your own context, to your own story, and you're just genuine, you're just being yourself, not trying to be anybody else, that's where it actually works. It's when we start flexing and pretending that we're somebody else or from somewhere else that it just falls flat.
Yeah, man. Definitely, that's the power of hip hop, and that's the power of Indian hip hop is going to be our different languages. That's like a very big uniting for India as well. Like that night when you were there were different rappers. There were people rapping in Punjabi, Tamil, Malayalam, and we had a big role to play in it. Like the Swadesi or like True Swadesi or Dopadelics or like Akline in Bombay. We changed the game from English to Hindi and other vernacular like our local languages, and with that changes a lot of reach. The people, because a lot of people don't understand English, and then I think that's what boosted up the scene in hip hop, because everyone started rapping in their own local languages, and that's how anywhere it becomes big. That's how like you have French rappers in France rapping in French or German or Russia or London in their own language. So India just we were just waiting for that moment, and it just happened. So I just think it's going to be the most powerful force to reckon with, because India, we've been suppressing a lot, man. Like in terms of musically, imagine if anyone had to do anything with music, we had to go to the movies.
Yeah.
They have a songwriter, they have a composer, they have a lyricist. Sorry, that's songwriter as well. They have a vocalist. That's what the MC was. And here, the MCs are doing everything. They're writing their own song and giving vocals to it and composing it.
Yeah.
So the Bollywood guys would exploit, and I mean, no singer. We don't have an independent music scene. We don't have a Billy Ray for country music, or we don't have a Iron Maiden for rock, or we don't, these beautiful genres that I see in Europe and US. We don't have that. We just have Bollywood, which sucks.
Well, I think in India, there's been times where that could have happened. Like there was a good pop music scene, it seems, for some time, like maybe late 90s, early 2000s and stuff. There's amazing rock bands out of India that, some of which I think I'd seen Zero out of Mumbai, but I'd seen them play in Delhi years ago, and they were phenomenal. Yeah. So the musicianship, the artistry in India is absolutely incredible because there's such a rich tradition of it. And I think the musicians and artists exist. But every time a scene rises up, somehow Bollywood gets its hands on it and it co-opts it. And then it sort of, for the most part, I think it waters it down. And then that scene just kind of dies off. So I'm curious from your perspective, like now that Gully Boy's out, and now that, the sort of street hip hop has kind of been front and center in through the lens of Bollywood. Like, do you think that changes anything for artists, for hip hop in general?
I mean, it does change because now everyone does know like what hip hop is in terms of like family members and common people. They know what it is, and so it's a nice thing. But it's also like a wake up call for all the artists to put on good music and to show people what real hip hop is, and not what they showed in Gully Boy. Because Gully Boy is the icing part of it, not the whole like hip hop. So thank you for making everyone like showing everyone what gully like hip hop is. But now let the hip hop heads, the guys who were present at that day, who the movie was based upon, Tony and all of those guys who you shot, let them tell the story, because they are the ones living inside that slum that you are showing in the movie. You're showing the movie, but that guy has a fucking 5 crore flat in, I mean, he's acting. But then I don't know. Like I don't think it's, first of all, I don't think it's fair, because Eminem did his own video. I mean, he did his own like 8 Mile.
Yeah.
And all of the artists that were present there were real life artists. Like they were really associated, like Obi Trice and all of these guys were in the movie, and they were like, they played roles. And so I feel I feel hip hop, the pioneers in hip hop deserve that role if they wanted to be there, because they are the ones fucking doing it on ground zero every day, pushing it, and there are people just come with a huge amount of money and invest in the scene which is already created, and then take everything and run away. But it's okay. I mean, I have nothing but love, but I'm just letting people know what the truth is. Because the real heroes are the boys living in Dharavi, going through that shit fucking for a decade now. They are the ones who are in all of this darkness, but still keeping the light of hip hop within all of the drugs, within all of the violence, within all of they've deprived of social, like everything, man. They don't have a place to go to the loo, or like just basic stuff that, that everyone gets in the world. They don't have that. They don't have that life. They have to struggle for everything. Yet they keep the light of hip hop running, and they've created this scene where like they've influenced the whole area, which is the largest slum in Asia. So it's a huge deal, man, for the boys, and I always big up them and all the massive in Bombay, because they are really like 90s hip hop, like everyone gets killed here. Like, people die in Bombay like for stupid shit, falling off the train, dead on the street, and fucking like on the bike or something like that, just stupid stuff. So they survive all of this, and yet they come out of it. It's amazing. So I mean, it's nice. Gully Boy did a nice job, but it's just they should like big up the real guys more, and they should write about them more, and the world should know about like them more.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think you're right there. Wow, you're packing a lot in. I want to sort of I want to pivot a little bit here, because when I look, so Shantanu, how old are you?
I am 23, bro.
You're only 23?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I don't know why I thought you were like 26, 27, somewhere like that. But okay. So first of all, you're way too damn wise for your age.
Yeah, man.
I look at you and I look at the youth of India, and you as a man have embraced the ancient and the new. If we look at yoga and spirituality, and then hip hop, and then you're doing action direction for films, acting. I believe you had started, I don't know if you still are, teaching self-defense classes to women.
Yes, I am.
You're traveling to and from Thailand, teaching yoga. I've seen you campaigning to protect the forest outside of Mumbai in the green zone. You do a lot of things, and you seem to do a lot of things very, very well with a lot of passion. What is it about you uniquely that you think makes you able to do so many things? A lot of people will go really deep in one direction. Why have you spread yourself across all of these different fields, and how do they relate to each other in your mind?
That's a beautiful question, man. Why do I do all sorts of things? Because I feel like in a very early age, I realized that, especially in this country, that you can't, if you want to do something out of your passion, you have to do many things and not just one thing, because that one thing won't be able to feed you on a monthly basis. Like that was like my reptilian or the hustler's brain. I always knew that I need to form like different means of getting revenue to make money. But
Mm-hmm.
and I was always in this pressure. Like, I mean, since I have a single mother and my sister, like, I'm home trying to make things. So I've got this pressure at this age, and I always try to be smart. And I see opportunities all around, and I believe in God. I believe like there's an Almighty out there. He's giving me all of this power, and it's just one life to live. I've seen like death, and I understand death is a beautiful thing, and only shows you the less time we have. So if you want to do anything and anything, you shouldn't fear. Like fear is the biggest. Like Doctor. I like this thing about quote about Doctor Abdul Kalam. He says that fear. A lot of the people use fear, FEAR, as forget everything and run.
Mm.
So lot of like like how you're doing this interview, you always wanted to do this, but before this you tried different things in your life. So at my stage also, at a very early stage, I tried these things, but whenever I wanted to do stuff like hip hop or things like something to do with acting or everything, this fear, forget everything and run, never let me do and never lets humanity do. But he also said that you could take this FEAR and make it face everything and rise.
Mm.
It's the same fear, but you're facing everything and rising above it. So yes,
Right.
if I want to see the change, and I was always like this angry guy, angry against the world and why this is wrong, that is wrong. And I looked at people, and the people didn't really do anything. So I'm like, oh, if I wanted to do something, I'll do it myself. If I want to see a change through hip hop, okay, I'm gonna get step into this shit and try to handle it myself. If I want to see the first Bruce Lee and like Muhammad Ali and someone, I'm going to step in myself and practice and do things. If I want to save the forest which is right next door, no one is fighting for it. I'm going to go in and involve everyone, go on the road, because I feel life is all about like making a difference. Otherwise we're just insects. That's the beauty of being human, because you can make a difference on the planet. A
Mm.
lot of us don't understand how powerful we are, but we are super powerful. That's what I learned in my time in yoga. They were talking about such. At that time, I thought supernatural. Like when you see holy saints, when you see saints, and when you see all of these mystics, like they're like 70 years old, but they walk in the Himalayas with nothing. They don't wear shoes. They don't wear anything. Yet they say in subterranean temperatures and minus temperatures and climates, and yet what are they searching for? How can they do that? How can they do all of these extreme things? I don't know, man. I was just observant about all of these things, and these things let me realize, like, like even when you say in India, I see the mothers, like Indian mothers, like, most of them, like, they're like celibate monks, they're like Kung Fu masters, 20, 25 years, they married off, they're just working every day, every morning, every evening, doing the same thing 25 years. So it makes me wonder, like, I can do so many things, but I just have to take the first step and go ahead and do it, without that fear, like facing everything about that fear.
So
And
how long have you been practicing yoga, and how did you get introduced to yoga?
I, my mother was always practicing to yoga, and I always knew, like in India, is a little bit common. Like we have yoga in school and everything. But deeply, I was searching for it after I had an accident in 2013 where I broke my leg. It was just like 6 days after I became the national Thai boxing champion.
Wow.
And yeah, man, like after 6 days, my friend was drunk. He dropped the bike, and there was like a truck carrying a huge amount of sand that ran over my leg and like ran over my leg and the bike. So it destroyed my ankle completely. There was no ankle. So there was this time where I just became the national champion, the best in India. This, and suddenly everything, like the doctor told me, you can't walk again like properly. You won't be able to do like office job and stuff like that. So I had to really go deep down inside and see if I everything that I have inside of me. And before that, I was never spiritual, so that was like my changing. Then I went to yoga, and they really changed my whole perspective on what life is. Because a lot of things intuitively I knew what was right. When I went there, those like books made tell me, like they told me the truth. Yes, your thinking is true. Yes, there is life after death. Yes, there is this thing called chi prana, where this is much more powerful than what we see, like like muscles or like
Right.
whatever, like there's much more to what meets the eye. So when I seen all of that, it gave me confidence, and that's why I left alcohol. I left like eating meat. I left, it's been 5.5 years that I'm alcohol free, I'm meat free. I left all of that. I used to drink and eat a lot before. So, I mean, that's how yoga has got control in me.
So you're actually now a competitive MMA fighter, and I've seen, I think, a couple of the matches that you've posted online. How
Yeah.
long have you been practicing that, and how did that come into your life?
Thai boxing.
Yeah.
Thai boxing. Okay, so like when I was breakdancing, you have these b-boy battles.
Yeah.
So like I used to battle before. I've battled like a lot of like well-known b-boys, and I was in like our crew was one of the best crew in Bombay. Like it had b-boys like Flying Machine, who's the four-time
Oh, wow,
Redwood
yeah.
BC. Yeah, Flying Machine. So he was a part of my crew. He's come and he's danced for my like school festival and all. Like he's my boy. Like we grew up together and all. But that's what I'm saying. I never found. I read like when I discovered Tupac and when I discovered like black music, I can say.
Yeah.
When I came to know what they went through and this, I'm like, oh shit, this is so similar to whatever we went through. Like, oh, we had the genocide. Oh, we had this, the same thing. Our culture was taken away. I am given English. Like Africans are supposed to speak in their own language, but they're speaking y'all. Like in U.S. American English. But it's the same thing for me as an Indian. My language was taken. They tried to take my language, but still, yet we've preserved it. So I mean, all of these things really like bothered me, man, because it was a very unfair society, and all types of shit was going down in India. It's still going down. You have politics, like you have the election coming up, and at that time there's a terrorist attack that happened in Bombay, and like there's this dudes who walked up with AK-47s and bombs and shit. And although I knew it was an inside job, but I was so pissed at the government because he's 70 years. So it's a lot of political motivation.
You're talking about 2611, right? In 2008?
2611, yeah. Because I was there and my friend got shot. He was shot dead. And so
where was
like,
this?
In Churchgate.
In Churchgate.
Yeah, he was the chef at Taj, and I was there present. So like, for me, just to have all of these things inside, to live in a society where people can walk into you and like carry a AK-47 or this whatever, and then to live in a society like Bombay where all my friends, like it was super violent. Everyone was murdering everyone, like it was a violent place to live in because there's no, all hell went loose, like from 1990s to 2008 2009 we had these bomb blasts and whatever. So I knew I had to battle more and make my voice raise my voice just like how Muhammad Ali did, because I'm super inspired by Muhammad Ali and super inspired by Bruce Lee, and that's what, believe it or not, that's what motivated me to do like Thai boxing. I'm like, this is a full contact sport. This is what I would need if I want to do mixed martial arts, where mixed martial arts is a place where it fulfills my soul. Because why I would say mixed martial arts fulfill my soul, because it gives me a sense of unity of the world, like how I would love to see the world come together. Like India can say France, oh we love your cheese, and then in mixed martial arts it's like, oh we love your kung fu, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we love like taekwondo, which is South Korean, we love Thai boxing, which is Muay Thai, we love Kalari. So martial arts is, everyone has this one martial arts which we all can thank for, and we can unite as mixed martial arts. That's in my head. I'm like, this is the perfect place if I wanted to spread my message. The message that I am speaking to you right now, but on a grander scale, people believing into my faith. When they see me fight inside, they will see my faith on why I believe in Guru Nanak Ji, and why I believe in the Sikh tradition, and why I believe in fighting for what I think is right. Literally fighting for it,
Right.
That's where I feel the message can be heard, and that's why I left breakdancing in 2012. I started Thai boxing. I became the national champion in 2013. After the accident, I was scared to continue Thai boxing, so for 2 years, 1 year rehabilitation, I started doing mixed martial arts. I fought 16 like national matches all around India, 16 MMA matches after rehabilitating my left leg.
Wow.
Then I won like bronze medal in the national in mixed martial arts last year, jiu-jitsu bronze again last year, and now I found a job in Thai boxing, so I will start continuing my professional mixed martial arts and Thai boxing life in Bangkok.
I have to ask you, for a lot of people, they'll look at you and they'll think, how can you be at the same time immersed in yoga and in an ultra-violent competitive MMA at the same time? Like, aren't those two opposites? I mean, I know a lot of MMA fighters in the West have taken up yoga as part of their overall regimen from both the spiritual and physical perspective, because for flexibility, for breath control, mindfulness, it's really helpful. But they're not necessarily coming at it originally from the spiritual tradition. Whereas for you, it sounds like both, Thai boxing and yoga kind of coexist at the same time, but they're not in conflict. How is that?
I think I would like to go back to when we were saying that there are evil people in this industry, and then there are good people. Like, I think the concept basically explained like in the holy books or in the Vedas, or is that the world is made up of two energies. One is plus and one is minus. One is yin and one is yang. One is black, one is white. And the balance of these two energies is what like makes the world the world. If everything is like just because of the evil, like just because of the night, how the day looks like. We cannot have a life where it's like sunset, beautiful sunset, 24 hours. You need that super dark night to appreciate that morning sunrise, to appreciate that the sunset. In a similar way, when in terms of energy, India and the East, I would say India, because India is the birthplace of martial arts. India is the birthplace of yoga. That the concept of having Shiva Shakti, or the concept of having plus and minus, or in the Eastern, like the Chinese or the Japanese, I would say yin and yang, always existed in this culture. You would see Lord Shiva always pointing up and pointing down, signifying that there is plus and there is minus. You will have these two characters until life is, but you have to choose where you have to be, and you have to balance both these energies inside your body. So it was only when I did this course, when I went to the Yoga Institute, I understood that even the founder of that institute was a wrestler. Wow. He was a wrestler who then met a yogi, and then like he understood the way of life, and then he balanced it out. So even like if I look at the greatest like Lord Shiva, or like all the 10 gurus, like Guru Nanak Ji, Guru Tej Bahadur, all of them are peaceful monks. They are the most silent people that we can ever imagine. Yet they are warriors. Yes, they are Khalsa warriors. Or I would like all the Kung Fu monks, which come from this saint called Bodhidharma, who was from India, who was he was the first Zen master. The Chinese call him the first Zen master. But if you fuck with him, he'll fuck you up.
He'll fuck you up.
That's the thing. Like, there needs to be balance in this world, Like, you can't just be all yin. You can't be all yang. It has to be a yin and yang. And essentially, that's my message to the world as well. Like, you need to balance both these energies. You can't be focusing on one side yet. Otherwise, you'll have the problems in the other side. If you're too peaceful, like if you people believe that if you're too Gandhi, you won't get independent. India never got independence because of Gandhi. India got independence because of Bose, by his military methods.
Agreed.
It wasn't the non-violent thing. Like Sikhism is a non-violent religion. Buddhism is a non-violent religion. Yet you still have the Khalsa and the Kung Fu monks practicing Shaolin to the highest disciplines. Why, when you practice that, you balance that yin in you, and then you don't have to go taking with your .5, shooting people with your mad crazy. Like, you don't have to go shoot and kill innocent people. Why? Because you utilizing all that energy and fighting inside the ring. And leaving everything inside the ring, or leaving
even in the civil rights movement in America, a lot of people today will look back and look at Martin Luther King Jr. as the architect of the civil rights movement and the driver of all the progress that Black Americans had made at that time. And he definitely has had an incredible hand in all of that. He's, I think, one of history's great men. But had it not also been for Malcolm X at the same time, and
Black
all of his
Panther,
efforts, and his efforts
for
that
sure.
were more,
Nation of Islam,
militant, definitely not necessarily non-violent. America looked at both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King at the same time, and was basically forced into which of these two options do we pick? Because it looks like the civil rights movement is going ahead anyways. These people are going to win their freedom. Which one of these narratives do they want? But had it only been Martin Luther King Jr. and no Malcolm X, or no counter narrative to it, we might not have gotten to the place that we got to at that point in time. Who knows how history would have played out? But I think this idea of a yin and yang or a plus and minus is a very Eastern concept. I mean, even the Trimurti within Vedic and Hindu culture, where you have Shiva as the destroyer and you have Vishnu as the preserver and you have Brahma as the creator, and understanding that there is a cycle and they're in constant flux. These ideas are new in concept, I think, in the West. They're maybe decades old versus being centuries or thousands of years old in the East. And it's interesting that you've managed to find a way to embody both of those at the same time. Because I can see a lot of people thinking, wow, like, how is he really a yogi if he's also fighting and teaching people how to fight, when those two aren't actually opposites and they can coexist in one person for good reason?
I mean, in Sanskrit, the literal meaning of yoga means union, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a lot of people don't understand this concept. I mean, even I couldn't understand this concept, that when they say it's yoga, people normally relate yoga to, like, when you see, like, hot yoga or Bikram yoga or Instagram yoga, where you see, like, like, super fit girls, like, posing, like, gymnastic, and when you think that, oh, that is, but yoga means union. So, if a farmer is just being a nice man all his life, he's not doing one pose. Of course, you have to do like a little bit stretching so that your body functions better and gets oxygen. Right. That's the goal, that so that you can meditate better. But the primary goal is not that, like of yoga. And if you can be like a nice man and you can do like welfare for the society, like Nikola Tesla, like, like people like them, like they're like karma yogis, like they do good for the society with unconditional love, they don't want anything back. Or there's Bhakti Yogi, where like Meera, for Krishna, she was so like, or you could say the Protestant Christians. That's a Bhakti movement right there, where you're going and thinking Lord is the Almighty and he's everything, and I don't want logic, I don't need anything, I find like hope in this, and that's all. So there are different types of these methods. Then there's Ashtang, there's Hat, and but all these different methods lead to the same thing, which is union. So if I'm a unified person, it doesn't mean that, what does it mean that I go on and I wear my yoga pants and keep roaming in my yoga pants? But it is that I be a good husband, I be a good brother, I be a good citizen of wherever I am, I be a good human being, I be a good like cleaner, I be like smiling to everyone, making a difference in other person's life. That is the true union,
Right.
I be a great fighter, but yet not promote fighting. Like if you see like in the United States, when you see like people going and swearing each other's religion, each other's caste, each other's race, you can still fight, but for the right reasons, and give respect, and like do your duty, but yet respect. And I don't know, like,
it's interesting because my wife, she's also a yoga instructor, and she's been practicing for quite a while. And she's just such a balanced individual in terms of all of the different things that she's able to do. More recently, she's been teaching yoga to children, to kids somewhere between 4 to 7, 8 years old. And just introducing this idea of mindfulness to children and getting them to kind of focus and calm down. Because especially like as kids, you're just hyper. You're always excited about something and you want to jump around and whatnot. So she's been able to very masterfully, I think, both get kids very excited, get them engaged in yoga, but then also get them thinking about mindfulness and peace and whatnot. I mean, she moved to Canada from Mumbai when she was 16. So she grew up in India, and then she's been here for a number of years now. And being introduced to yoga in India and then seeing how yoga is introduced in the West, they're very different things, because it varies from teacher to teacher, from institute to institute. But here, there's a lot of places that are very hesitant to really delve into the spiritual history and those sides of yoga. Some people will get, almost downright offended if there's chanting at all, because it's seen as being religious. There's a lot of schools in Canada and in the US have introduced yoga programs into elementary schools because they find it helps kids with focus, with self-discipline, with mindfulness.
Of course, man.
So, all of those things are happening. I think, yoga is going to be around as long as we're on this planet, and it finds a way to stay relevant to people. And yet we live in a place, in a world that is constantly challenging that mindfulness. So it's interesting to meet, someone like you who's living both extremes of that at the same time. I'm curious, because you've touched on a lot of different things about the world in general, but India specifically. You would be wise at 53, forget 23. and you're very aware of what's going on around you. I'm curious, where do you see India going in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Do you see this new generation changing things? What are the real challenges that you believe are facing the country as in moving forward?
I think like right now, the phase that the country is in, I think it's the most critical phase since maybe 1,400 or 500 years, man.
Okay, that's a bold statement. Tell me more.
I would say the first Mughal invader. Yeah. Can I just have a quick sip of water?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. This
Okay.
reminds me of when
It's
you were
gonna be, like,
beatboxing
long.
and then they were like Shantanu Pujari like that.
It's like fucking half an hour later. So when I say India is in a very critical stage from the first Islamic invasion which happened by Babur at probably 300 AD,
Mm-hmm.
350 AD. That's a long time ago, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
And from that time, India has been constantly been suppressed, and its identity has been taken away from itself. What do I mean when I say that? We had two universities, like major universities in the country. One was Takshila on top, and one was Nalanda, like in the center of the country. Now, in these major universities, you had people from all over the country coming and studying. They were studying different topics, touching on different topics from astronomy, history. They were studying science. When I say science, they were studying cosmetic surgery. They were studying like deep levels of Ayurveda, like holistic science, holistic medicine. They were doing everything related to medicine. They were doing architecture. So you had all of these different subjects where people were studying, and they've been studying since thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after this, since the first Islamic invasion happened in Babur, and I know it sounds super creepy that I'm 23 and I'm talking about all of this, and since we're in 2019, and but hear me out.
No,
It
we're
gets
past
interesting.
all that. I'm listening.
Since the first Islamic invasion, all of these guys come, and what do they do? They start burning all of the universities. So remember when Takshila was burned, it took 3 months for them to burn all the books that was in Takshila. Imagine all the books that were there. And when these books were there, they talked about a lot of things. They were talking, like, these books were talking about politics. Books were talking about different diseases. These books were talking about different technology and how the things were built. You see these ancient temples, which are like carbon dating of like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years back.
Mm-hmm.
So all these architectural science, basically just science, Vedas, different science was burned by the Mughals. People were forcefully converted. People were told to convert this, that. Whoever not converted, they were like killed or massacred. All the temples and all the architecture, all, like, if you see Jammu Kashmir, it was a super Hindu civilization. It had beautiful temples, but they destroyed it all. Then after that, you see, because of that Islamic invasion, Sikhism was born. Because anyone who had to come to invade India, they had to come from the northwest frontier, which is the Punjab
Right.
region. Because at that time, the Europeans didn't discover the sea route. So anyone would come from the northwest frontier, and that's why Sikhism was formed, because they would take the first hit. That's why the first Guru Nanak was born, and he told every man will be Singh and every woman will be Kaur, and you will protect for this. And that's how Sikhism was born. Few years later, you have a sense of nationalism. There are Marathas. There are in South India. You have the Vijay Raja. You have all of these kingdoms. The sense of nationalism rose again. They rose against them, and then the European power started coming, and you had all of the five people. You had the Dutch that came in, you had the French that came in, you had the Portuguese came in, you had, like, of course, the British came in. And when the British came in 300 years ago, what they did is they did the most horrible thing that they could do. What they did, they not only did famines, and they divided the country into stupid borders where it doesn't make any sense, why Bangladesh is not part of India because we both speak the same language. Doesn't make sense why India and Nepal are not together because we both speak the same language.
Right.
India and Pakistan is not same together because we both speak the same language. But they also, like, their governors, they knew that they wanted to break the country. And since India was such a, like, imagine like more than 4% of the world's GDP would come from India. That means till 1840, all the diamonds that were relatively sold in the world would come only from India. So you had like world economies are based on gold right now. World economies are based on like all of these resources, and we had the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
We were the power source. If you would make a government of that, we would be the richest. Like our 1 rupee would be like $100.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been that with the resources, but what did this British do? They knew that they want to loot us. They came with the East India Company.
Yep.
They set up so many companies. They signed a declaration of independence. They set up so many companies. The companies never left. They changed the education system from Sanskrit, where the whole country would speak Sanskrit. They had different languages. Like I had Marathi, I had Tamil, I had all of these, but we all spoke Sanskrit. So everyone would speak Sanskrit and travel all around India. So like instance of Swami Vivekananda going and traveling down south, speaking in the language of Sanskrit. So you could imagine how good the country was in terms of business, traveling from here to the sense of unity because everyone spoke in Sanskrit. The Sanskrit was taken away and everyone would speak in English. English was the national language. They changed the education system into a British education system. Everyone is studying about what's going in America, the first war of independence, this, that, this, that. They're not talking about the slave trade. They're not talking about the genocide. They're not talking about Native American genocide. Mm-hmm. But I'm learning how much of a hero that Christopher Columbus is. Or I'm hearing like how much of a hero, like who I don't give zero shit, like zero crap about King Louis IV of France. Who gives a shit about him?
Yeah.
Like he didn't do anything for my people. Why am I studying about him? So the education system was changed. Our minds were changed. All of these companies that the British came in with are still in this country. All this East India Company right now, there are 150 to 160 companies which are in this country, which are they're operating out of this country. Like you had Vodafone and all of these British companies taking shitload of money, campaigning the ads, suppressing the small scale industry. Then you had the British who fucked it up for us so massively. Like, you could imagine, like they put a delusion, they distributed the countries because they were scared that if you can imagine modern day India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal coming together. You can't like deal with this nation of this size, That's why they divided this. 70 years now we are free, but we're not yet free because there was a party which was ruling, which is like Congress, which was like the bastards of the British, They left only because they knew that these guys are going to help us, like providing all of these land and the companies will still run on. The money would be still flowing in, but it's just fake independence, Like it's a heavy topic, man. Like for me, I feel in 70 years, how is it possible that a nation that Israel, which was formed in 1947, or Hiroshima, Nagasaki, which was Japan 1947, or all these like bullshit that I hear, or Germany 1947, and here you have India, which was never like we went through war, but then like infrastructure wasn't like we are such a big nation. Why couldn't we build ourselves in that way where we can challenge a country like Germany or Japan or like Israel, which is like such tiny? What went wrong? So what went wrong is the narrative, because the people believe that they're more Americans than they're Indians. People believe that they're more British than they're Indians. People believe that they're more white than they're Indian. Now with the music, with the where everyone is singing in their own language, the heroes are not more fair, they're dark. The narrative is changing. The Prime Minister is also like helping for this narrative, and he's really my hope. I'm not a right wing, like whatever you would say, but I feel if he wins again, I think real change in this country will start coming. So I'm like Narendra Modi, basically, that this Prime Minister, if he wins, then I feel like change can come. Otherwise, I think he'll go to the dogs.
I mean, I've been following as closely as I can from the outside, and obviously living in India and living outside of it are two different things. But I think India is a very unique case in and of itself because it is probably the greatest degree of diversity within a single country. In terms of, there's nearly 1,000 different languages and dialects spoken that have been spoken for hundreds of years. It's been very accepting of people from the outside. So every single religion in the world has coexisted in India long before multiculturalism existed in the West. And because of a lot of that history, and I think because of the meddling that happened, particularly at the hands of the British and, the other European colonizers, what it did is, you're right, I think we forgot a lot about our true history, but a lot of these other complexities of language, of race, of religion and whatnot, Japan is a lot more homogenous than India. Japan doesn't have the sort of extent of diversity in terms of religions and languages spoken. And Japan has also largely been closed to the outside world. Like, they're not actively welcoming people from the rest of the world to move to Japan because they've been very sort of protective of the culture. And even, Germany, the languages are more or less similar. Culturally, there's less, I think, of an extent of variation. But India is basically packing all of Europe and more into one single country and then expecting it to function and get along in 70 years, which is a really tall order. And I think even just on that note, I think India has actually done a remarkable job in such a short time, but it's got a long way to go, no question.
No, I mean, I would like to differ on that because I don't think that. See, there are civilizations over here that existed way before. Like, as an anthropologist, I'm seeing that there have been kingdoms in India that have lived together as one, irrespective of their whatever they believed in. There have been multiple examples of so many kingdoms that have been here which live together as one. Yeah, man. I mean, I would not like to believe this. I mean, I know you can be right where they're saying that it can be a long way to go, but I would not want to hope that, since we are 1.5 billion people, so the poverty also is on a larger scale that I see every day. And I don't wish to see that, because I've been seeing this since a child.
Yeah.
And for me, it sucks to see a person just struggling to eat food. It's like I have the first world, but then I'm seeing the third world right in front of my doorstep. So I just want that to change, and I feel it's changing. I mean, internet has got a lot to do with it. The new government has to do very much a lot. Because it's not like the money is not there, It's not like we don't have the money.
India has a lot of money, even now.
India has a lot of money, man. Like Bombay, just think about Bombay.
Yeah.
Think about how much money that the Bollywood industry or the industry that we are in, or think about the real estate prices. Think about like the business that happens here. Think about all the trade that happens here, the stock exchange and all. The money is there. People want to, but it's the level of corruption and it's the level of the delusion that was caused by the British, which was then carried on. But this is just pure truth. This is not just philosophy, but this is truth. This is what they were doing. This is what they did. The Congress took on what the British were doing, and they just continued to distract people or continue to delude people that they're all different. They all need a different state. They can't function as one because Indians always they always lived as one. You're talking about a civilization which was far from like Afghanistan all the way to Cambodia, Bali, and like the Tibetans. Everything is like is this culture.
I think we're actually on the same page there. I don't think that historically India has been. I mean, obviously every country in its history has challenges, but I don't think that people have necessarily just been separate. I think that what happened was even where there was minimal complaints or issues between any two groups of people, you get someone like doing what the British did. Even as they left India, they basically just threw like a burning cocktail into a room and put people against each other, right? So, I mean, if you go back to the mutiny in 1857, they've documented that they used to grease the barrels of the Hindu soldiers with beef fat and of the Muslim soldiers with pork fat.
That's what they want to do.
Yeah, so they were dividing long time ago. It's not a new phenomenon. So I agree with you in that if you focus too much on people's differences and what makes them separate from one another, you actually lose the point of what makes them alike and the same, right? And we need to come together and focus on what brings us together as human beings. And that's not just in India, that's everywhere.
Definitely. And like another thing, like in a narrative, when I see people say, when I told you, like I started with the Indian invasion, I started with the Islamic invasion, Yet people like, the British tried super hard to create like a communal disturbance between India and sorry, not Indian, but Hindus and the Muslims. So you have the 1947 like partition and in like Hindu versus Muslims, and then you have the Bombay riots or the Hindu versus Muslims. But yet, if you see like when you see like the way Muslims are treated in Europe, the way Muslims are treated in Israel and Palestine, the way Muslims are treated in America, like even a first state like America. And then when you see Muslims in India, then you understand like what liberal Muslims actually are. Or even when you see Muslims in like Saudi, like where they are like where their state is, where they say that this is our state. But in that state, you're not allowed to go around in your burqas and then remove the burqa and then like make out like freely with your boyfriend, Like you see that on the streets of Bombay, like you're practicing Islam, but that doesn't mean like you can't do all of this shit. That's liberal, know. Like no one tells you anything. Like the couples are roaming fully freely. They're nice, and we celebrate all the Muslim festivals. Like we never thought, like me as a teenager, I never thought of my Muslim brother as a Muslim guy. Because I love the biryani as much as he loves it. It was made in my house as much as it was made in his house. So I mean, it's not a community. It's not a communal thing in this country. So in that way, I think the country is really united and is very powerful because you don't have all of these aspects that is stopping. Uh, like if you see the New Zealand shooting, or you see Europe like banning Muslim people, or no mosques allowed, stupid stuff like that. Like why no mosque allowed? Like you think all Muslims are terrorists or all refugee Muslims? You're just aggravating the problem.
Yep.
Whereas in India, it's not that. Like Muslims don't have a problem with Hindus. Like we all chill together, we all like friends together, we all watch movies. It's not even a thing to talk about. It's just like so common. And when we look at this world news, we're like, what are you all talking about? Like, what is Trump on about?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that over 1,500 years, people have been together, like living side by side, right? People here, there's a lot of racism and bigotry like the world over. There's a lot of it. Even in Canada, it still exists. But the people that are most anti-whatever, if they are anti-black people or anti-Muslim or anti-Hindu or anti-this or that or the other, most of the time the people that feel that way have had the least exposure to the people that they hate. They've rarely been in a neighborhood with them. They've rarely been working side by side with them. They've rarely, had a meal together with them. They haven't built actual human relationships with them. So they see the news coverage that's already a distortion of truth in the first place because if you see a Muslim in the news, quite often today they're portrayed in such a negative light that that's now your perspective on them. And they haven't ever actually even come into contact in any meaningful way with the person. So their hate is so misinformed in the first place. But I think in India, in much of India, I think it would be very hard to be in any city, in any neighborhood, in any village, and not have come into contact in some meaningful way with people who are Muslim or Buddhist or Sikh or Christian or whatnot. And that'll vary from
just chilling with each other, just chilling with each other. All their like religious places are next to each other. You see a like mosque right in front of a church, in front of a temple, it's all just mixed up. It's a big hodgepodge, and it's not like as sick, like, like just last week, Brunei, there's a nation next to Philippines.
Yeah.
They did the, like, you're allowed to kill gay men to death. So, all this stupid stuff, you like, I mean, that's like too extreme. So you don't have all of that happening in India. I mean, I know like Muslim gay men in Bombay, man, that, they sleep around so much. For that, like, I feel like India is so ahead, thinking about all of this. Like, I feel in that way, it's super ahead. Like, you're not racist towards them. It's a part of our culture. We are freedom fighters who are Muslim. Our Sufi saints, like our music that we listen to is fully Sufi. So I think when I see India ahead, I feel it can be a leader to this world, man, where we show the world how to live and celebrate what we have and settle our differences, but celebrate our differences. Because when you celebrate your differences, then you get to get the best of every world, I want the rice from China with dal of India, with starters from, like you get everything, it's the world is colorful together. So
yeah, and
I think in that way,
India does food properly that way too. I get the variety and mix you find, and I think it comes from that same place that people there just love the best of everything and want to bring it together.
That's been the history of all this melting pot also, like since the first Syrian Christians came in 300s, like 300 AD, where like, they were sent back from Syria, since the first Israelis came here, since the first Jews came here from Persia, since the first like all the Islamic people who came from like Afghanistan, who came from Pakistan, who came from high up like Iran, there's so many Iranis here. So when they came, of course they got their food, the Portuguese, they came here, they got their potatoes, the French came here, the British came here. All of them got the food, and we just never let the food go, We said go back, but don't go, just leave your food here.
Leave your food here.
So
So what's before we kind of wrap up, what's next for you? Like you've started this new job in Thailand. Tell us more about that, and where is there anywhere people can find out more about you or about a cause or something that's really important to you?
I mean, as like but right now my cause and only cause is like hip hop, pushing that and pushing all the guys that have the stories. So they can check Most Wanted Records out. I'm doing artist management for them.
Okay.
There's this new independent record label that's come up, and I'm doing A&R, and I'm just managing few like producing artists and just raising an army. This year we released this month actually we released 3 albums from 3 different artists, and this year we're going to release nine more albums. So that's like this year is going to be revolutionary because never in India has been so many albums come out in 1 year.
And what's
So that's one
what's the
thing that I'm
website
doing.
again?
And the label is called Most Wanted Records.
Okay.
So there's like Instagram, there's website, there's Facebook.
Okay.
You can check it out, and the music is going to be everywhere, iTunes, Spotify, and all. So you can check that out. It's going to be up in 2 weeks. So by the time you put this podcast, the music will be out.
It's just really interesting to see what you're doing there, and it's kind of tying the world together in a really good way, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, man, it's the broken native connection. It's just all different brothers broken from the homeland meeting at different places. That's the future, bro. That's the answer to the question that you asked me. What do you see India ahead? This India, the India which broke out of India, they had to leave, they had to go different places, and just meeting and connecting and making like letting the world know the truth, because India is all about the truth. It's just the param satya, as they say in Sanskrit, is the absolute truth.
I hear you.
We're born, we will die.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I have to say, I didn't know you were 23. I, for some reason, thought you were a little bit older, at least. I feel extremely inspired and hopeful just knowing that there is, young people, young men out there like you thinking the way that you do, and sort of not just thinking about it, but actually living it too. The world today needs more people like you thinking and living and being in the world the way that you are. So I would love to continue this conversation, sometime again soon, pick up on some other things. I think hip hop, I get carried away talking about it, listening to more about it. And I think there's a lot of other directions that we can take this conversation.
Definitely, man. And it was like a super big blessing that you had me again. It was beautiful to see you after so many years like this.
It's been too long. And hopefully next time I'm in Mumbai, we don't miss each other.
Definitely don't, man. Definitely don't, man.
Well, Shantanu, this has been amazing. We're going to do this again for sure. Thank you so much for making time.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much having me on this fucking podcast, man. God bless.
Thanks, Shantanu. That's a wrap. So, if you've listened till this point in the episode, I can only assume one of two things. You either A, really dig this podcast, or B, you started playing the podcast and left the room and totally forgot it was even playing, and right now I'm just talking to nobody. So if you are digging this podcast, there's many ways that you can support it. You can definitely subscribe in your app of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, in TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and for all the folks around the world, we're on Rukus Avenue Radio. You can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, we're at AwokenWord Podcast. On Twitter as @AwokenWord. We also have a Facebook page under AwokenWord Podcast. Hey, if you've got an idea for a guest or a conversation or a topic that you'd like to see or hear touched on, please reach out. Let us know. Feel free to share some of these ideas or bring up some of these ideas in your own podcasts. If you're hanging out with friends or family, maybe over beers or coffee or a smoothie, who am I to judge? If you're hanging out with someone and something comes to mind, tell them about this podcast. Tell them this is where you heard it. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your great-grandma. Tell that weird naked guy who hangs out on his balcony on the building across the street from you all the time. We appreciate the support of each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next episode of Awoken Word, peace out.